Come on. Hello. He woo, he woo. Welcome, welcome, welcome to more gift art fun stuff. Let's go. Gotta do more gift art because I want to get this done. I want to get all these gifts done and so I can post them and all that junk. What am I doing today? That's a good question. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Stram. Oh well, thank you, the calc monster. What time is it for me? It's about like 2:30 something in the afternoon. You know, just chilling, hanging out, doing some art or something. And I mean, again, this is obviously like it's an art stream, but I try to talk when I can. And as always, if the stream randomly crashes, I apologize. Because my streaming program is not the most reliable thing in the world. It could be much better sometime. Do you have any tips for beginner artists? Because I need all the help I can get. Well, I don't have anything that's going to be like specific or things that you probably haven't heard before. Like the only general advice I could give is use references. Don't make anyone don't let anyone make you think that using references is cheating or something. Another thing would just be like, don't be afraid to look around at tutorials and all that junk. So I don't know. I don't have any real specific advice for a beginner artist. The only things I would have are really just mostly general, but I don't know. Maybe that helps you, maybe not. Hang on, I'm opening up my... I'm gonna open this stream on my phone so that I can be able to moderate the chat this time. And I can also just sit and let my my other iPad charge. So there we go. That'll be better. Yeah, and if anyone here sticks around and like if something happens and my thing crashes, you guys be the ones to be pals and let other people know that it was because the stream crashed, and chances are I will probably be back in the next few minutes. Since typically I will try to go back. It'll just have to be, it comes back as a separate stream, which is a little bit frustrating. But if it does crash, just like tell the other people that it what happened, that it was my streaming program that crashed, and then that I'll probably be back in a minute. So with that being said, let's do some art stuff, right? Let's do some arty stuff. So I got like 4 of these done and good. I'll use gift art for people, and for anyone new to what this little thing is, I have some friends and mutuals who I want to do art for. Just because they're either cool people or they're my friends or whatever. So I want to draw some of their characters, do some fan art, and the reason I'm not calling it like drawing my friends OCs is because some of these people I don't think they consider me friends, but we do mutually follow each other, so I'm counting it as mutuals. So the ones I have left so far is a character by Arifex Dracona. I have a character from my lovely internet wife, Quantablos. I have one from Bubba Bew on DA. I have one from Pencil Tree on DA. And one from Glamist on DA and YouTube. So, hello, this is where the viewer choice gets to come in here. What should I work on next? Because I got so many choices all over the place. All these lovely, lovely characters. I'll just, like, flip through these, I guess. Or I'll just open them all, and you can just see just a chaos of line work. Quans, the green robot, internet wife, please do hers, green Pikachu. Green Pikachu. That's funny. The one from your internet wife, the green one, the one with the mask, Quans. Green one, I want green Pikachu. Mask dude, the red one with the big goggles and triangle hair. The lady, I think, with horns looks cool. I think they're horns. Bruh, anime girl. The red dude. To the only one with a color other than red. Oh, goodness. I mean, you are right. There's quite a lot of red sketches going on. Like, I'm seeing a lot for Arifex Draconas, so we'll just go for Arifex Draconas. She has some really, really fun characters that are a part of, like, a little series she has, and I've always wanted to draw some of them. There was a different one I was going to draw. It's her, like, Lemonade Island Girls, which is, like, her kind of more comedic, like, series where it's like, you know, like kind of dating simulator kind of game or story idea. And I wanted to draw one of them that she had a reference for, and there was a different one I was going to do. For some reason I'm blanking on her name offhand, but there's just so much other artwork of that specific character. I felt like I need to do something that doesn't have as much artwork done of them, so I picked her Robo Girl, because I do like drawing me some robots on occasion. So let's get started with this. And again, you're free to ask questions and talk or whatever. I apologize if I can't answer them all. Sometimes I get really focused on the drawing and I miss stuff. So, like, if I don't answer your question right away, you are free to ask it again. Just don't, like, spam every 5 seconds because I didn't immediately read your comment. So, yeah, and we'll have a good time, hopefully, and hopefully this won't crash. Please. Oh, goodness. Yeah, the program's Procreate. It's a really good program, and they've been making a lot of updates to it lately with a lot of really good updates. It's been really funny because I've had it for a while, and I've recently been seeing it really rise in, like, notoriety, which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's a very good program. It's only for as far as I'm aware, it's only for, like, iPads and things like that. But if you have a ability, if you're an artist and you're looking for a good program, it's not a bad investment, I would say, if you really like what you do. But it's a it's a pretty good program, and I like it a lot, so. Zodiac and Mitchie make the best streams. Okay, I gotta think about this hair a little bit here, because I'm trying to remember what I did. Like, sometimes I make sketches, and then I'm away from them for a long time, and I, like, totally forget what I was trying to do with them. And then I'm like, fuck, you know? Off we go. Do you like... Hang on, it disappeared. Do you like the Persona 5? I have never played it before, so I have no opinions. What motivates you to draw when you don't feel like it? Also sending hugs from see, there's two ways that could be pronounced in my mind, and I just Pinas, I think is what it's supposed to say. I hope I got that right. Usually when I like when I kind of have to draw for like commissions or something like that, I'm having a hard time. And like the only real way I can describe it is that I just have to like make myself do it, and I have to sit down and commit to doing it. And it's not usually going to come as naturally, and I usually have to spend a little bit more time in those cases. And typically I will say, when I get really burned out, it's more like I get burnt out doing specific stuff, and it kind of is almost like my brain switches to like, I want something easy. So typically when I actually get burnt out, I actually don't mind like coloring or shading so much, because it's just something kind of simple and relaxing and a little bit more mindless, unlike sketching and lining. So typically it just becomes a struggle of just trying to get through it, but the only thing I can really say is don't try to avoid drawing altogether. I mean, if you have to, you have to, and that's not always a bad thing. It's just like, you know, it just is, it takes a little bit of a mental power to like just keep doing it, so you're not like totally destroying your workflow, because if you let yourself get dragged into that rut and just stop drawing for too long, getting like starting to draw again is going to be a lot more difficult, unless you get like really inspired by something or something like that. Because I like sketching a lot. It's just sometimes when I get a little bit like, you know, when I get a little bit tired, or it's like I'm not very motivated to draw, it's like just sketching usually takes so much longer, and usually when I want my sketches to be cleaner, it's not a very good spot to be in. You know, especially when you're working for commissions and stuff like that. So, you know, just some of it is just to keep yourself drawing, even if it's crap, you know. Just because, you know, even if it's crap, just keep drawing so you're at least doing something. It doesn't totally destroy your workflow either. Unless you got more important things to focus on. What brushes do you like to use in Procreate? Well, I use primarily for a lot of my, like, you know, the one that everyone always asks about is the one for line art. That one's just a technical pencil. I've made some adjustments to it in terms of, like, pressure and stuff like that, but it's very similar to how it was when I got the program. But I use that for line art and all that sort of stuff. I use the the hard airbrush for most of my shading and stuff, with, again, a few little minor tweaks. But again, it's primarily the same. For then for a lot of things, there are a lot of other brushes I use to do certain things. That's why that question is always a little bit difficult when people just ask, what kind of brushes do you use? Because very, very rarely is one artist going to only ever use one kind of brush. Like for me, when I draw, there's typically, when I do certain coloring things, I use different brushes depending on what I want. You know, for freckles, I use a speckly, freckly brush to get the kind of randomness that you want out of freckles, so it doesn't look super uniform on accident. And then there's like, I actually, like, even just yesterday, I sat down and I was making a bunch of texture brushes, or pattern brushes. You know, whenever you need like a fancy pattern, but it's like you can't really just sit down and just draw one. It's usually helpful to have some brushes, and Procreate comes with some of those, but I went online and I found some like free transparent patterns, and I made some brushes out of them for like when I need some like fancy stuff and I don't want it all to look like the Victorian pattern I typically use. So, you know, there's that too. You have the white eyes, so I'm gonna just leave I'm gonna just do this very lightly. Very lightly. Which do you think is better, full body or bust? I mean, it depends on what you're working on. Neither is like more superior. I think busts can typically I think busts are a lot better for when you want, like, you know, I think, hang on, let me look at her hair real quick. I gotta think about this. Do I want to treat her hair like metal, or do I want to treat it like it's actually hair? Because that would determine what I'll treat it like hair. Yeah, because I think she's going for hair, not like... Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. But what was I saying? Oh, I was saying the bust thing. I think that when you're drawing, like, if you really want to emphasize a character's, like, expression, a bust is definitely bigger depending on your style. Just because a bust is usually going to be a lot closer to the face, and it's going to... And not only do you see the face, but then you see the arms and the body language, but you get a very clear sense of facial expressions. But of course, full bodies are still important. It's just typically full bodies are a little bit better when you're trying to do something a little bit more, you know, like where there's an action going on, you know what I mean? I was not good. But like, I don't think one's better than the other. I do tend to do a lot of busts, I think, but that's just because that's what a lot of people commission me to do, and that's usually the best for me when I'm like making a quick character design for a role play or something like that. Well, I should say this. I get so confused sometimes. Bust is shoulders up. So that would be good for when you're doing expressions and things like that. What I was talking about for a second was waist up, so that's my mistake. I just sometimes when people say busts, I don't know why my brain goes waists up. I don't know, but yeah, for comparing a full body to a bust, like an actual shoulders up picture, busts are better when you want a very, like, again, you want to emphasize the expression of the character, but they're not good if you actually want to depict, like, in action or, like, an entire character, you know? Because it leaves a lot very ambiguous. Because someone can have a certain face, but have multiple different kinds of body shapes and things like that. So neither is better than the other. It just depends on the context you're using it in. I would say usually a waist up or a leg up is usually a pretty happy medium between the two, depending on what you're doing. But, you know, just depends. Question: I see that you used to be a fan of Warrior Cats, and I've come to wonder what your current relationship with the series is. I still admire it from afar. I'm not like super into the fandom like I used to be. I've tried to do things related to it before, like get back into role playing with it or making a story with it and stuff. I've tried it a few times because I still very much admire the world, and it's the kind of world that really gets your imagination going. But I haven't been able to really sit down, and I'm not really like hyper invested in the fandom like I used to be, and I haven't read any of the actual like more recent books, just because they haven't really enticed me as much like the old ones did and all that, and plus I just don't read a whole lot anymore like I used to. Get your teefers in there. Some lovely, lovely teefers. I have done human warrior cats before. There's a few pictures. There's about like 3 different pictures related to it. I have wanted to do more because like, and this is a personal preference, okay? This isn't me like trying to shit on anyone else's interpretation or whatever, but there's a lot of like human interpretations that like for warrior cats that I just didn't like. And that mostly has to do with the fact that a lot of human interpretations of warrior cats will always look extremely modern. Not all of them, just a lot of them look really, really modern. And I've never personally liked that. I like it when the human interpretation of warrior cats look more like tribal or just something fitting to what they like kind of are in their story. I just feel like modern doesn't really work. I feel like it works for in contrast with like the rogues and like the other groups that live in like the suburb on the streets and stuff like that. But for like a bunch of forest living cats, the transition, I don't know, for me, the mental transition between a bunch of wild cats that live in the forest and live in clans having like having like having them live in a forest in like clans and kind of tribal like, and then having human translations that are like wearing hoodies or t-shirts or with like really modern clothing is just a little weird to me, and it just doesn't it feels kind of boring in my own personal opinion. Again, nothing wrong with if like that's what people want to make them as. Everyone is you know, everyone's entitled to their own, like, what they like and what they don't. There's probably people who hate really tribal looking warrior cats, and that's okay. I just wish some people put a little bit more thought into human interpretations, and that's why I tried to do that with mine. And again, people are free to dislike mine as well. But, I like the thought of having a little bit more depth into what like human warrior cats would actually be like, because there'd just be a lot of differences in how they behave and like appearances and stuff like that, that I don't think a lot of people explore. So I've wanted to do more with it, if you can tell, but I just haven't really been able to like sit down. I just haven't had the motivation to really sit down and do anything. There was one person who was like, if I commissioned you to do Human Warrior Cats, would you do more? And I'd be like, and I'd be like, I was like, hell yeah, I'd totally do that. But I haven't gotten a commission like that quite yet, but, you know, so maybe I'll do more of those in the future at some point. How do you feel about Gacha life? I mean, it's something. To me, I see it kind of like, you know, there's always a kind of like internet trend that gets like where it's the cringy side of things, and there's always a different one that comes to light, you know. And to me, it almost feels like the same kind of like, how do I describe it? Like tween, young teenager, even younger than that trend, uh, like that, you know, it's kind of the same level to me as like what creepypasta was a few years ago and stuff like that, where, you know, it's a very popular little subculture right now for two reasons, like the people who actually enjoy it and then the people who like love to shit on it, you know. And I don't think all the criticism is entirely invalid. There are some gotcha life videos out there that are like really really disgusting. And it's definitely not my cup of tea. I don't like, for example, when I watch YouTube, it's always in tandem with like me drawing something. So I do not, like, the moment I turn on a video, if the main thing is like text, I immediately go to a different video because I can't do that. I'm trying to draw at the same time. I need to, like, something to listen to, that isn't just music with text, you know? And also just, you know, it's not the whole, like, character generator storytelling thing is just not very appealing to me, which is fine if it's appealing to other people. It's just not really my thing. Um, so, you know, it is what it is. I think like it's fine if people do enjoy it and enjoy that side of it. You know, it's a creative output, and I remember being that kind of kid as well. So I used to, like, I cannot tell you how obsessed I was with like doll maker games and shit when I was younger. Like every single day, I'd always like play some doll maker game and just for my own escapism enjoyment. Have you seen any of the SS Warrior Cats animations? I did, and when I was a kid, when I saw those, I was so disappointed that the series didn't ever continue. Because it was really cool. Gotta do these robo fingers. See, one of my favorite parts about, like, kind of robot-y designs is, like, the segmented kind of joints thing. I just think it's kind of a cool little aesthetic. How long did it take you to animate The Wolf and the Rabbit? So, funny story with that. Um, and I don't want to get anyone's hopes up. I don't know if I'm going to actually do any more animated little short films. I might if I like really get the motivation to, but here's a story to express the difficulty with that. I started that animation like last year in my animation class, and I got burnt out of it halfway through, and I just stopped working on it because I just could not find the motivation to keep working on it for a while. And it wasn't until this year when I went back to the animation class that I actually finished it, because I just got so burnt out of it before. So I'd say in total, again, it's really hard to judge because there's like it's really hard to judge how long it took because the time period it wasn't like I was working on it with like the same amount of time every single day. It was like, you go to a class for 3 hours, and then sometimes I'd even take breaks from working on it. So I wouldn't work on it at all in one day. But I'd say my estimate for probably how long it took in total was probably like at least 2 months. I think would be probably the best estimate, like if you put all the days together and like Frankenstein them together. But it could have been longer than that, maybe a little bit shorter, maybe. But it took a while to do that. What's your favorite type of soup? I don't think I really have any. I guess it means less like it's ramen or something like that, I guess. Do you like Takis? If so, what flavor is your favorite? Not really. I've never tried one, but I don't think I'd really like it. Just doesn't seem like my kind of snack. Do you know Wolfie Chew? And if you could collab with any YouTuber, who would it be? And it can't be with someone you've already done before. I mean, I know who Wolfie Chew is. I don't really consume her content. I know of her. Um, and I don't know who I'd collaborate with. I haven't really collaborated with a lot of people, and I don't know what we would collaborate for unless it was just like general art collaboration kind of thing. Like I've done like a YouTube art trade collaboration with Mitchie before. But I wouldn't know. I mean, I'm not that I'm closed off from doing that kind of stuff. I just don't know what I would collab about, you know. Um, so. Focusing. By the way, tapping the screen is like ASMR to me. Well, thank you. I'd stop it's sort of part of the process here with this with this pen, so. How many toxic fan bases have you been in? I mean, here's the thing though. Every fan base has a toxic part. Every single one. And like I don't care if you want to argue about which one has a more prevalent toxic one, because I think that's a fair thing to talk about, but every single fan base, every single one has a toxic part to it, especially when it's at its like peak of popularity. There's no such thing as like a fan base that's just exclusively toxic, and there's no such thing as a fan base without a toxic part. It just means you haven't seen your toxic part, or your toxic part is quieter than others. So literally any fan base I could have been in has a toxic part. Steven Universe had a toxic part. Five Nights at Freddy's had a toxic part. Creepypasta had a very bad toxic part, which I would probably say is one of the worst because it had such very drastic real life consequences. Undertale had a toxic fan base. Literally any kind of fandom you could ever think of either has or had a toxic fan base, and most likely still does, even if it's died down. But I don't believe in the idea that some fan bases are superior to others because every fan base has bad parts. It's just human nature. And personally, I don't think that the toxic people in those communities should represent the whole to people, and that they should act like just because someone's a part of a fan base, that means they're inherently toxic or that they're inherently cringy or whatever. I don't know how Awestruck Fox. I've never heard of that person, so. What's your favorite person slash animals or thing to draw? I mean, I have a lot of those. I have a lot of variety and stuff I like to draw and stuff I like to do, and sometimes it depends on context. Like, it just depends. So that's a question that's just too broad for me to give you one answer. Because I have a lot of stuff I do enjoy drawing. And I will say one thing I do really like is actually being able to draw other things I'm not usually used to, like different kinds of animals, different kinds of creatures, things like that. Do you like PewDiePie and Mary Ham or Poppy Gloria? I don't watch them, so I don't have an opinion. Out of the main universe, 10, who's your favorite to draw? There we go. That's a question I probably can answer if I think about it. I'd say probably my favorite to draw would technically be Vanessa, probably. Because, just to be personal, out of all of those characters, Vanessa is probably my favorite out of the group for reasons I can't expound upon because it's spoiler related. But I've loved her story, and I enjoy her a lot as a character, and all of the shit I'm putting her through. But she's probably one of my favorite characters to draw out of the bunch. Just because I think she's interesting, and I don't know, she's not maybe the most aesthetically pleasing character, but she's just been fun, and I've had her around for a while, so. Have you ever tried out D&D? Not yet. I'm gonna try and do a D&D session with some of my friends. We're setting one up that, though, I will be honest, though, it's not really a D&D session. It's more of a glorified tabletop roleplay, but I'm going to be DMing it because it's set in my big fantasy world with some of my friends, and I've changed a lot of the traditional D&D rules to better suit my personal preferences, because my only thing with D&D, and part of the reason why I never really got into it, is because A, it takes so long to set up your character, and B, it's just a lot of technical stuff when there's a lot of things where it's like I just kind of want to be like, that sounds legit, and then move on, you know? So I've never done an actual D&D session, but I probably will do a glorified tabletop roleplay with some of my friends at some point, whenever two of them finish their character sheets. So. Do you have any tips on drawing robots, since I have a channel idea with robots in them? I guess mine would just be you gotta really think about, because this is something that a lot of people when they draw robots don't really think about, and it can lead to having, like, really unbelievable robots or really kind of, like, boring robots, is that you gotta really sit down and think about what your robots look like and how they function and, like, the reason why they have certain things. Because, you know, like, a big thing a lot of people do is that a lot of people don't want to draw segmented faces or, like, robotic looking faces, so they typically try and just go with a human face for, like, a humanoid robot, which is fine. However, you got to think about the fact that if that's the case, this means that the robot was built to have, like, a fleshy kind of overtone, and that means they have a lot of little face plates underneath to make their face move in a humanoid way, which does exist. If you look out there, there's robots that do that, you know? So it's not unbelievable for that, but you have to really sit down there and think, like, how your robot would have been built, what's realistic for your world, what's, like, what looks like something believable, you know, just stuff like that, and thinking about, like, just kind of the technical aspects of your robot rather than just the aesthetic appeal of them. You know, because if you're living, for example, if your character is a robot that exists in a post-apocalyptic world where the supplies people would have would be crude and not very refined and, like, professional or clean, whatever, then chances are your robot is not going to look very humanoid. They're probably going to look very, you know, they're going to look like they're made out of scrap parts, most likely. So it's just a matter of thinking about where your robot comes from, what their function is, all that sort of stuff. So I hope that helps a little bit. But also, I would recommend just get creative with robots. I've always personally had a thing where I have the same opinion with things like aliens and stuff too. I like it when they're a little bit more interesting than just, like, human with a different skin color or something like that. I like having or seeing robots and aliens and stuff that are just different and more unique than that, you know? And there's nothing wrong with having a robot or alien character that's more humanoid if that's what you want to go for. It's just, you know, I always thought that it's a little bit more interesting to think more about that. Because, again, I can't say that everyone who does it is uncreative. I do that in one of my stories. There's a reason behind it that's explained within the context of the world, but, you know, and it's fine. If people do that purely aesthetically, there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that if you have the opportunity to, it's worth trying to think of something that's a little bit more maybe different than what most people see. It can be a fun thing, and it can be a fun for your exercise for your brain as well as all that. So, you know, just something to think about. I'm also, just so anyone knows who's curious, I'm doing this on a separate layer, so that when I draw this tail, I can just use one color, and I can just do it between the two layers without having to do anything complicated. What would you describe your style as? Anime or cartoons? I personally describe my style as, like, you know, like semi-realistic with like, you know, cartoonish animated kind of flair to it. I don't think there's anything I can directly compare it to. And what's hard is that there's people who like I've had people who say that my art style is really anime-ish, which I don't entirely agree, but if that's what they see, that's what they see. I've also had people say my style is very Disney-esque. Uh, so, you know, I get a lot of different things, and I don't really have one like way to describe my style as just other than mine. Just the best way I can think of it is that I prefer, you know, kind of somewhat realistic proportions, but with like, you know, exaggerated expressions and poses and just kind of a fun, more energetic feeling to it rather than just being super stiff and realistic, you know? Or strictly realistic, I should say. I mean, I've also had people say that I apparently have the dreaded Tumblr style, which is kind of funny because I'm not on Tumblr at all, and I still don't actually know what Tumblr style even means. So, but you know, people see what people see. Twist that around a little bit, just a little. Who's your favorite fictional character? I mean, of all time, I don't think I could pick one. I don't know if I have one specific fictional character I like, or more than others, I should say. Okay, what color is this? It's about this color? Yeah, it's just white. White and gray, white and gray. Go with this. I'm trying to use this pencil-y brush more for like different colory things. Because I just feel like that's something that I connect with, that I like a lot in my style. So I'm trying to use it more in general for other things, so that can kind of be something that is more consistent throughout my style and not just something that's in the line art. I also learned recently you can do this in Procreate, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Where has it been all my life? Do you have any tips on coloring? Depends what tips you're looking for, I guess. Um, like, are you looking for like general, like picking colors? Are you looking for, you know, like ways to color faster? You know, like what are you looking for in terms of coloring? Need to make sure. See, this is always sometimes the tricky part when I have to fill all this in, because almost every single time there's a lot of spaces. I always miss one, and I think I got them all, hopefully, so I don't have to go back for it. Yay! Alright, let me get some actual good colors in here. So that's supposed to be more white than the thing, so we'll just put that all the way up here in the corner as far as we can go without getting to a solid white. Any tips you got on drawing dynamic poses other than the invisible line thing? Like, what do you mean other than the invisible line thing? Like, because I talked about this, I think, in another video, but, like, I can't tell if that's what you're referencing. Because my typical advice is basically that you go through, and when you're doing the pose the first time, you just do it as fast as possible. Don't worry about the details. Like, you basically take it... Let me get a better color here to show you. Like, you just kind of sketch through, you know, create, like, basically create a stick figure kind of thing, showing, like, what kind of pose you're looking for, and then go back over top of it and, like, fill in the details and stuff like that afterwards. But if you get, like, that general shape in there, it helps you with slightly more... Yeah, well, I mean, I know a lot of people use an invisible line to show the wave of action and stuff. Well, that's because that's a general strategy, and that's the best one to do when you're trying to do dynamic poses. Line of action is a very important thing, especially when it comes to, like, cartoons and things like that, because, like, even in this character, she has a line of action being like this. And, I got that a little off-center. But, you know, she has a line of action, and I can highlight where her line of action kind of goes. And she's got, like, some other shapes in there and stuff like that. So it's actually a very... That is part of the secret and the foundation for making a dynamic pose. There's not a lot more I could tell you in terms of that, unless you're asking for, like, tips on perspective, which is a different discussion. But when it comes to actual, like, dynamic poses, you're going to have to think about flow and things like that. The only other thing I could think to help you would be to, like, focus on trying to have, like, a balance of curved and angular lines, like having, like, a straight line here and a bent line here, then up here having, like, a straight line up here for the hand, and then, like, curved line up here, because that gives a sort of, like, it gives a kind of nice little balancing effect. But I will tell you this, here's the thing, if what you're asking is a way to draw dynamic poses without doing that initial kind of rough sketch, I don't have any tips for you, because that is actually something that's extremely valuable for artists and something that professional artists do. Most artists typically will have, like, you know, they'll have a very, very rough sketch, and then they'll have another sketch on top of it, which is the refined sketch. That's what I typically do when I do things, is I'll usually have a very, very quick sketch underneath that has the general energy. I have it for this picture. I actually do, I have it for, like, this picture right here. I have one that, like, that was my pose sketch, like, my original rough sketch. As you can tell, you get an idea of the pose, but there's, like, no focus on the hands, or no focus on the details or anything, and then on top of that, there's a better sketch. So, you know, it's typically, don't be, like, don't try and avoid, like, I don't know how to describe it. Don't try to avoid doing, like, the rough sketch and see, like, I want to just create a finished artwork the moment I start writing on pen and paper, because trust me, professionals don't do that. Professionals don't sit down and just draw everything first try without any other layers, you know? Like, there's a layering process. Even traditional art has layering processes. So, you know, it's just kind of necessary. And it's just something that it's very helpful. And listen, I'm not saying you can't do it without, like, a rough sketch underneath, but your life will be a lot easier if you do, and there's not really any reason not to make your life a little bit easier on yourself. Sorry, that was a tangent. Why do rough sketches or sketches? And I think it's just because we already associate, like, rough sketches with being a little bit messy, so in a way our mental standards are lower. This is how I feel about it, at least. I don't know for certain, obviously. But, like, I think it's just because with sketches, our mental standards for the quality of a sketch is a little lower. Plus, like, you know, to be honest, there's something, usually when you see a sketch, there's a lot more energy in a sketch, you know? There's usually not, like, when you do line art, that's usually when someone sits down, slows down, and really has to try and think and articulate. That's when you can get weird kind of bumps and things, and if something's not perfectly smooth, it really sticks out more than it would in a sketch. While with sketches, it's just pure, for most of the time, sketches are like just pure energy. So, you know, it's just it's a learning process, and I think just sketches tend to be more appealing because A, our standards are just a little bit lower for sketches, and B, they just usually feel a little bit more energetic and a little bit more like they have more life put into them, because typically the sketch is not as like focused on being perfect. It has more of that energy in it. Have you ever had to deal with art thieves / tracers? I have a feeling not, but... Oh, no, I've dealt with them before. I've dealt with them plenty of times. I just don't advertise them because typically there's no need to put their name on the internet that much. No, but yeah. Honestly, when you get... The thing is, like, this is some unfortunate advice. Like, whenever people... I feel bad, but whenever people ask me, like, what do you do to avoid, like, art thieves and tracers? And I'm going to tell you this right now. If you want to avoid art thieves and tracers as a whole, the unfortunate reality is you just shouldn't post your artwork online. And that's about all oh no. Oh no, come on. My screen is glitching, hang on. No, don't do this to me. Oh god, I hate this. Oh my god, I hate this. No, shit! Ugh! Sometimes my stupid screen glitches, and then, there we go, Jesus. Okay, sometimes my screen will just glitch, and, like, certain parts won't actually tap, and it gets really frustrating. Okay, we're all fine, it's all fine now. Anyway, but, like I was saying, whenever people ask me, hello? Where'd my... There it is. Okay, I don't know. My screen's glitching out a little bit, guys. Forgive me. Hopefully I don't have to do anything weird and end the stream or anything like that. Anyway, the unfortunate reality is whenever people ask me, like, how do you avoid art thieves and that kind of thing, the unfortunate response is that the only way to totally avoid them altogether is to not post your art online at all. Like, that's the just unfortunate truth of the matter, because no matter what you do, someone's gonna try and steal your work, and the thing is, too, I'm gonna be totally honest here, okay? Unless the person stealing your art is a big company or a big user, it's not really a big deal. And usually people aren't going to fall for it for very long, because reverse image search is so easy, and it's so easy to tell, like, an amateur art thief, you know, because there's usually a repetitive pattern of how to spot them and stuff like that. But unless someone's, like, selling your work for profit, or it's a company that's, like, using your design as a logo or something, don't worry about it. Like, really just don't. Just try and just report them and move on with your day, because, and just, like, leave awareness so, you know, no strangers see it and get, like, misled or something like that. But, like, genuinely, I think some people make a way bigger deal on, like, you know, the petty child on DeviantArt who just steals art because they don't know any better. Some people overreact so much with those people, and they make it a bigger deal than it really needs to be. Because it's just so, like, you know, it's obviously, no, like, I'm not condoning it at all. It's just the fact that, like, it's gonna happen, and typically, your average tracer and thief is typically going to be a younger kid. Or it's going to be a a troll, quote unquote, who thinks it's super funny to steal art and that everyone's gonna laugh at them because they're sad and they don't actually have any kind of better life than to just steal art for their own entertainment, you know? But those kind of people, they're not going to be successful online. They're not going to damage your career that much. The only people you'd have to worry about is like companies and like bigger creators who, because there are a few bigger creators out there who are that kind of scum, you know, who will steal artwork and claim it as their own. Cough, cough, not to name any names. But, you know, so just if you see someone like that and there's somebody like stealing your artwork or tracing your artwork, all you need to do is just bring awareness. Do not harass the person and do not send people to harass the person. Just make people aware of it so that strangers don't get like, you know, so people know. Maybe leave a comment on their profile so that like hopefully strangers and passerbys can understand that this artwork is not theirs and don't accidentally get tricked. And you know, just report the stuff. Because trust me, it's like it's just so there's really like no need to flip out and act like it's the end of the world because you got your art reposted by some idiot online or whatever, because chances are it's not going to affect your career that much all the time, and it's just an unfortunate reality of doing your work. And trust me, usually by the time you get to a size where it's common for people to take from you, people are probably going to recognize your style at that point. I've had people before who like have seen my art reposted and they've recognized it. So, you know, you shouldn't be scared of posting online because there's some idiots out there who feel like, I'm just gonna take someone else's art and claim it's my own, because that's not scummy. And, you know, because they're usually very, very easy to deal with, and it's very, very easy to win that argument. The only times it's actually something you should really focus your energy on is if they're, again, trying to make profit or scam people. There are people out there who, will like, you know, steal adopts from people and then resell them and then scam people out of their money. That's when it's an issue, because then you have an innocent person who gets scammed because some dirtbag decided to resell it, and now suddenly they don't get that character, nor do they get that money back. So those are the cases where you need to worry about it a little bit more. If there's money involved, but if there's not money involved and it's not actually damaging your reputation or whatever, it's fine. And again, unfortunately, if you want to avoid it altogether, the only solution is just not to post online. That is the only solution. Sorry, that was a whole rant. See, it's fine if you ask. It's totally fine if you ask, like, hey, can I trace this pose for practice? Can I make a base out of this? Can I do it? It's always fine to ask. And don't let anyone think that you're bad for asking. Oh, dear. It's totally fine to ask people. You should be able to take no for an answer. I've met people before who ask and get really salty when the artist says no, because like they'll ask and the artist will say no, and then they're like, what do you mean no? I asked, didn't I? And it's like, yeah, you asked and I said no. Ain't that a shocking way that works? You know, so don't be that guy. But it's always fine to ask. And the reality is too is that tracing can be used as a learning mechanism. That's something that professional artists will do. They will like trace over a pose and then like recreate it themselves. You know, just make sure that if you are going to use someone else's work, especially if you're going to post online, it's different if it's like private and you're just literally doing it for practice. You don't post online anywhere, nothing like that. You know, that's a little bit different. But like if you're going to post it online, just make sure you ask the artist, and make sure you credit the artist, of course, as well. Because I've been approached by some people, it's like, hey, can we repost this art? like on a fandom board for something, like if it's fan content, and I'm like, sure, go ahead, because I don't really like at that, if so long as I'm credited, I don't really care, but because they asked me, I don't care. So, you know, especially when it comes to fan content. Are you doing anything special for Pride? Not really, probably. I've just got a lot of other things to focus on. I'm doing, like, on Patreon, I'm doing, like, Pride themed rewards, but that's about it. I'm not really planning to do any, like, big picture for Pride or anything like that. I might do something small and cute, but that'd be the most of it. I just got a lot of other things to do right now. Plus, I'm, like, gonna go on vacation and all that junk, so, you know. Plus, last year when I posted some stuff for Pride, I got a bunch of people nitpicking it and, like, you know, pointing out things that don't really matter and trying to invalidate certain things, and I just, you know, I'm not really wanting to do that again, but it's okay. It's a different story. Okay, I need to see how these markings work. Alright, so there's one, like, I don't think you could see the one on her forehead. I'll just leave, like, a little... That's too low. Just a little something there. I want it out a little bit more. Humanity's getting so I can agree with that. There's a lot of issues where it's like, I just want to look at people like, you know, I don't know what the secret to happiness is, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with just learning when not to care. You know, like, there's a lot, and there's a lot of things where I can't even say my opinion, because the second I do, people brand me as something I'm not, and can't seem to fathom the idea that someone might have an opinion on something, but, like, not actually, like, you know, like, you know, act on that opinion, or, like, that they might still be understanding and open to people, like, disagreeing with them, and that they're not going to, like, just because they have an opinion on something doesn't mean they're gonna, like, commit a hate crime or something like that. I don't know. And then, like, there's this whole stupid stuff about free speech, and how there are these stupid people who seem not to realize that free speech is 100% a two-way street, and that, you know, you get the right to express whatever opinions you want, which is a wonderful, magical thing, and it has led to many improvements in society, and it's a great thing. And yet, whenever someone else exercises their right to free speech, they should be silenced, because that's not free speech. Because, you know, I can insult whoever I want, and that's protected under free speech, but them, it's insulting people they want to insult? That's hate. What are you talking about? It's stupid. I know, and yeah, I hate cancel. Can we cancel culture? Because that I feel like that'd be fitting, because I hate it a lot. It's like, it's so, it basically invalidates people as human beings, and there's exceptions to this. You know, there's a difference. There's a difference between someone being, like, you know, a child predator, and then someone being, like, you know, saying some stupid shit 10 years ago. Like, it's so much. And I hate it so much because it's like, it's basically saying that humans are incapable of changing and that the way we are born is the way we will be until we die, because that's how human works. That's how that works. Of course. How could I be so blind? It's ridiculous. I hate cancel culture. I wouldn't mind if cancel culture got canceled. Does she have a certain color for the inside of her mouth? You know what? I think I just realized, shoot. I think I want to make this green. Because her reference is blue, but she can have other colors. So I think I'm going to have some fun with this, and I'm going to make it green. Because I think that'd be fun. It's going to be a little bit awkward, though. Ah! There's still gift art. Let me fix this up a little bit. Tighten these up a little. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, I like the green. Let's do green. Green's fun. Green's a fun color. Plus, everyone was joking that she was green Pikachu anyway, and that's the color I used for her sketch, so it's fitting. Makes it red. No, that was my selection layer. That's what Procreate does when you select something. It inverts the color so you can tell what you just selected. So yeah, it's still, that was just my selection layer. Some pearly green eyes. And I'm going to assume that the inside of her mouth is supposed to also be whatever tech color she is. And if that's not the case, well, I'm going with it because there is nothing in the reference to tell me otherwise. She's got some fancy black lips going on, so let's just slap some lipstick on there. Who are you drawing? It's a character for Aerofax Dracona, one of my mutuals, since I'm doing some gift arty art. Come on, she looks like a human Xbox. I gotta tell all these to her when I send her this. She looks like a human Xbox. Xbox Pikachu. Do 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 do. I'm assuming these will turn green too. Hopefully. I totally offset that. That's the entirely correct in spot. There we go. Do this arm. Hang on, I'm just adjusting myself a little bit. How do you develop plots for stories? I can always come up with world and characters, but never a plot. So, well, it's just I don't really know if I have a solid way to, like, a solid answer for you here. It's just figuring out. I mean, honestly, if you have a world and characters, plots can be pretty easy to come up with. It may not be, depending on your story, it may not be easy to become with, like, some big overarching plot, but not all stories need those. There's plenty of stories that are just kind of a series of smaller stories, or, you know, a collection of, like, you know, or a collection of stories, or even just a world where things happen and the story just follows random things that are not related, you know? You don't always need a big arching plot for all your stories, and if you want one, then it's just gonna have to take you to figure out what kind of stories would happen, you know? Like, what kind of things would happen in the world, even if they're, like, mundane, or if they're just normal things, anything that could be explored to be interesting, or like a conflict or anything of that sort. There's not really one answer I can give you that's going to be like a satisfactory that's what you do answer, but it's just going to take some playing around and exploring your world a little bit and seeing what kind of stories would exist. Ta-da! It's colored. Hang on, I need to mess with the line art a little bit here, because some of the line art is boring, or it needs better colors. Can't really tell if her skin needs a better color or not. Do 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 do. Ta-da! Okay, well now, here comes the true test of this thing's endurance. Will it let me actually shade this in one stream and not cut out? Get ready, kids. We're gonna test this and see if I can just shade this picture without any problems. Can I? Probably not, but we're gonna try. Are you ready, kids? Oh, my phone is about to die. Well. One second, let me trade out my phone for something else real quick. So my phone doesn't die. 1 second. Oh. Hang on. Be back in a second. Once I change this out. There we go. So I can still read the chat. Okay. There we go. All right, back on schedule. Okay. That's the tail. Pretty simple with the tail. Here we go. We're going to assume her mouth doesn't glow and that I don't have to consider what her mouth is doing. Any tips on making cool add-up batches, like add-ups that people actually want? Well, the first step I can tell you right now, make add-ups you want, like you would buy. Like, you know, don't make add-ups that are like, blah, I don't like this, but I'm sure other people will buy it. Because if that's how you think, people aren't going to want to buy it. Because if you wouldn't buy your own work, why should you expect anyone else to buy it too? So the first step to making add-ups that people will actually buy is to make add-ups that you personally like and that you think are nice to look at or would be characters that you would personally want to have. This can be difficult because sometimes when we do that, we are then like, oh, I want to keep it so badly. But at the end of the day, if you wouldn't buy that character, no one else is probably going to want to buy that character. And that's just the reality of things. The other thing I would tell you is that sometimes with add-ops, it's sometimes an advertising thing because, like, you know, if you just make sure you put them in the right places, it'll help. Add-ops can be tricky, especially because it's such a competitive market. And typically when you're just starting out doing add-ops or, like, you don't really have a large following, it's going to be hard to find, like, customers, especially if the add-ops you're selling are expensive. Which you shouldn't underprice yourself. You're just going to have to realize it's going to be harder to sell things if you're not well known and you're charging things for like $30, $40. You know what I mean? Another thing I would say when it comes to being appealing is just finding like, don't make things too overly complicated. You know, like uh, don't try and make this like wild, crazy design to make it super unique, because people tend to gravitate better to simpler designs rather than big, crazy, complicated ones, because simpler designs are usually more fun to work with and are usually more open to interpretation, you know? So don't put too many details. I mean, some people can make this work. There are some artists that have like very detailed ad-ops and they sell like crazy, but I'll be honest, those kinds of really detailed ad-ops are typically complemented with a very, very, very good art. Like, you know, so that's why usually that's usually why they do so well, is because they look really pretty, you know? And that's just the reality of things. What other tips could I give? I guess I could also say try and have like some variety in ad-ops. Like, don't try and stay away from making ad-ops that look a little like too cliche, because some people will love it if you go with like the tropes of things, and things like that, and you might find sellers. But in reality, if it looks like an ad-op design that like, I guess think of it like this: if it looks like something that quote unquote anyone could come up with, or that like everyone already kind of has, people aren't probably going to buy it. So I'd try and stick with coming up with something like more unique, and more different, because people are usually attracted to things that are character designs that are very unique, you know? Most people are anyway. And I will be honest, also ones that are aesthetically pleasing. The unfortunate reality is, from my experience, when you try and sell ad-ops that are quote unquote ugly, or, you know, like just not a character that's like aesthetically pretty, they have a harder time selling, unless the audience you're trying to appeal to are ones that like specifically like grotesque looking monsters. It's easier to sell ad-ops that look pretty than ad-ops that don't, which I personally wish was different, because I think that like there's a lot of interest to be had with characters that don't look aesthetically pretty. And I mean that more like, you know, old people characters, characters that look really monsterish in the creepy way rather than the attractive way. Stuff like that. I think that stuff's really interesting, but unfortunately, that's stuff that just doesn't seem to appeal to a general populace. So if you really want your ad-ops to do well, you're probably going to have to, at first at least, stick to more attractive ad-ops and things like that. And unless you're going for the more niche audience, which you can do, and which you can totally find success in if you hit all the right buttons. But, you know, that's just, unfortunately, that is the unfortunate advice, is to try and make stuff look kind of aesthetically pleasing and pretty to look at, with pretty faces and all that stuff. Because I cannot tell you how many friends of mine, when they say I got a new ad-opt and they show me what it is, it's, you know, it's a pretty lady. You know what I mean? Oh, goodness. So, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that's helpful for in terms of ad-ops and things like that. I'd also say this is also like, I hope maybe this will be slightly helpful. Try and look for trends. I mean, you're gonna have to know how to do those trends correctly to really profit from them. But like, look for trends. Like, there was a time when like mystery ad-ops and or aesthetic ad-ops were trending big in like the DeviantArt ad-opt kind of community side of things. So, you know, if you see like a trend and you feel like you can do that trend in a way that people would like, don't be afraid to like do something along with that trend, because that's usually how you're going to make like find a more active searching for you audience, if it's something that's kind of currently in the popular sort of area of things. Marketing's weird, and marketing is unfortunately based a lot more on numbers than it is on actual, like, genuine creativity. But, you know, that's just how it is sometimes. Art is a balance. I want some big scary I do too. When you finally found your style, who was the character that changed the most? Well, the thing is, I've always had a style, and it's just been slowly growing with me. There was never a moment where I'm like, oh, this is my style. You know, style, contrary to what some people kind of make people believe, is not like a stagnant thing that you find and then suddenly that's how you draw forever. It's a constantly changing thing that changes with you as you improve as an artist. And in a way, you have a style the moment you pick up a pen and paper or a tablet and a stylus. It's just that you're not very skilled at art. So your style isn't going to be the most appealing thing because you still have some art things to improve. So, you know, style isn't something that we just wake up with, or we have an epiphany and suddenly realize, oh, that's my art style. Because it's just something that's always with us and it's constantly changing as we improve as artists and things like that. So I don't really have a character that has changed that much because they've constantly been changing as I develop as an artist and as a writer and as a creator and a storyteller and what have you. So, you know. Making Monster Girl add-ups based on some prompts. One is music, and I can't think of any ideas. Do you have any? You could create a Monster Girl that is like a living instrument kind of thing. Something like that, maybe, would be cool. That source is a little bit fucked here, but it's hard because she's gonna have a bunch of glowing parts. She's also made of metal. So there's that. Do you know about the whole crystally thing? If so, what's your opinion? That's a whole other issue, and that has a lot of legal stuff, so I don't think I have any kind of opinion that would be anything different than what the majority of the populace thinks about the guy. How much do you swear? Depends on the mood I'm in. Okay, I want to tweak some of these colors a little bit here. Because for the skin, the purple doesn't look very nice. Looks much nicer. There we go. Now she looks prettier. Now I gotta go through and do some even more detailed shadows. Get a little bit more purple. For shading, do you like overlay or multiply areas? I use both. I use multiply for shading, and I use overlay for lighting. I just think they're both, like, I think they just are very nice, and they're usually very good when you're trying to get something done and you're just, like, not trying to spend a good chunk of your life working on it. And honestly, I don't understand why there's, like, people out there who are just like, don't you dare touch like the layer settings. You have to know color theory all on your own, and you have to be able to color without any layer settings at all. They are only for like final touch-ups, which, like, yes, you do need to understand how colors work. It's why just because you slap a multiply layer and a color over something doesn't make it look good. You have to know what color. It's why I go back and I change my multiply colors to things that are more suited to the undertone. Like for greens and blues, they need they like, that's why for greens and blues they usually have a more purple tint, and then like for everything else it's usually a bit more red, and then it changes accordingly. They're not cheating, because you still have to know how to use those layers to actually make it look good and like understand what you're using. Plus, like, again, it's not cheating, it's just being able to use your resources and know what you can use to make your piece look better. And of course, again, you do need to know color theory, and you need to have a basic idea of how, like, shading works with things and what looks appealing, you know? But that's something you learn. There's nothing wrong with using layer settings and stuff like that, and I don't know where people got that idea that it was, or that it somehow was cheating to do that, or that you weren't as good of an artist because you used those layers to your advantage. Now we gotta do lighting with all the green. This is where we get like so much green. To make it a little bit more yellowy. Just a little. Her finger's glowing just a little bit. Just a little.